Well, here we are. Hi, guys. How are you doing there, Pastor Karen Shield?
I'm fine.
How are things in Harrow?
We're doing okay.
Yeah? Did,
Yeah,
did you have to shovel snow this morning?
I did.
Oh,
Came in, started late last night, I guess. It was raining here most of yesterday, so.
yeah, yeah. Well, Karen,
Just,
this is Severin that you see somewhere in one
hi.
of the blocks, and this is Karen Shield, and it's great to have you here. Um, the word from Harrow is that you had to shovel snow at the church that you pastor this morning.
No, I had shoveled it at home. I left it here.
Oh,
Someone
okay.
will be along to do that for me. So,
Oh, okay. Well, thank goodness for the MDiv, right? Yeah,
yeah.
that's the important thing. So, Severin, you're having a regular old student day. And how's the work? How are things right now? You're closing in on the last 2 weeks. We're in the last 2 weeks of the semester. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I'm in education, so the big thing that I had to finish was a unit plan, which is a 2 week chunk of time to plan for, which you think would be so straightforward, but it's a professional document. So it was a 50-page document that I had to finish. And it's done now. Things are slowing down. I have a recorder test, but I'm a musician, so that's like,
Yeah. We were talking, Karen, before you joined in. We were talking about the aftermath of this production of Stranger in the Land, and we were musing about the strangeness of a run that really ended with one dress rehearsal on a Tuesday. Then we did a line rehearsal on the Wednesday, uh, and then we did a performance Friday night for an audience of 10. And then we did close-ups for no audience at all on Saturday, and that was the end. And how strange that was, how it feels like it's just not complete. By comparison, you had how many live performances of the first and second iterations? I'm
We normally ran shows 2 weeks, right?
um
Or did we just
I
run them 1 week?
we I don't recall exactly, but we had we had at least 5 shows the first time round, and, or maybe we ran it for
Yeah, and
two
we did
weekends.
the same amount of home shows the second time.
Yeah, and then
And
we had
then
the
was it
tour.
13 performances? Yeah, 12 or 13 on the road or something.
Yeah,
It was more than a week.
yeah. The tour was, I think,
we
10
went
days
to church
long.
in Owen Sound, so we
Yeah,
had more than a week.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't have many of the
between
doc.
the home show and the tour run, I think we did an Italian line run, and that was it.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
didn't really rehearse to tour.
yeah. That's right.
I don't remember how long it was a break, but
Yes. Yeah. Well, one of the documents that I dredged up out of my archives of my computer was the tour itinerary, and their proposals for 2 different routes that we didn't do. We did a kind of combination of them, but it was that was an ambitious tour. So sorry, Severin. I know that.
so jealous. But yeah, it was weird, like working up to like one thing, and then our first performance is opening and closing night. And I remember I just got home and I felt like, oh, like, did it even happen? Like, was I even there? Like, and I was, of course, but I'm very happy that we had the day after, even just that it was like just a few scenes here and there just to say goodbye, because I would have died otherwise. But I guess
Hmm.
like doing, uh, I guess over 20 performances of Anna, do you think that like your character shifted over all of these performances at all, or?
Well, she had two. I had two different scripts.
Right. True.
Yeah, like, so, I mean, they're like, but I'd say, so certainly between the first and second show, like, the different runs, the script had changed. So I went from being a historian who's sharing her research because which she was interested in, because her family didn't tell the stories. So she kind of did all this research to learn what was going on, and then in presenting, like, it's I always thought of it in my own mind as I was presenting my PhD thesis for review.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
have the podium and everything for the beginning of the show. So you start through this sharing, and then I get sucked into the story. It keeps coming alive around me. First it's confusion, and then you just go with it. The second time, it was more like talking to my psychiatrist, with a certain amount of resentment about having to tell someone the story, and getting sucked in as well, and not being able to tell the difference between my memories and my and reality. So there were some moments when, and then again, by the time you get to the bombing sequence, that's the sort of the realization I've lost control, and the story is happening, and I'm just following through. I'm just, but yeah, in terms of, and I know while we were on the tour, Ray actually had Ryan, who was playing young at the time. I remember that he pulled us aside and actually asked us to change some things. So that's when you decided to sort of work towards the father concept. In my notes somewhere, because when I was pulling up the photographs, I came across some of my notes, which were with the pictures, and you had asked us to change some of the motivations on the boat sequence coming over. We have in the second production for the tour show, we had a scene on the boat where we have this conversation about him processing what's been happening. And that's when I share my story about my dad.
That's right.
Because see, at that point, it's my dad, who's, because of course it's 25 years ago, so it would be my dad who was in the war. So yeah, so we wanted to change the motivations in that sequence to understand, to kind of lean a little bit more towards a father-daughter thing.
Right.
Because I know, yeah, because like Ryan and I often played it that little bit of, it was like he needed me to understand something. And by the time you get into the second act, I needed him to figure something out in order to save us both. You know, like there was a sense to which how we get through this story is important for both of our characters to survive this story. So,
right.
Yeah, and I know that kind of developed as we go, sort of through the whole process, and probably a little bit from as you go through the show, a little bit when you perform it that many times. So yeah, it's mostly that there are just little things that change with the different performances based on, you know, like every night, because we were in a different place, we had to set the set up differently. There was always something that had to be tweaked. And so that would sometimes reveal new things for you. Like final performance, we lost sound just before the bombing sequence.
Yes.
They couldn't get it on.
No
and
bombs.
I'm the only one at this point facing forward on the stage, and all I see from the booth is no. The booth is dancing up and down and trying to like single stretch.
You remember now.
Finally, we just went with it silent, and then just as we get to the very end of it was essentially a choreographed sequence. Just as we got to the end of it, the sound came in. So you just get the final explosion.
That's right. It was the whole booth. The whole booth went dead.
Yeah.
As I recall.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't get the lights for that either, because the lights all go red.
That's right.
So
everything froze.
Yeah, so I had to signal the cast with some kind of, I think that I did some gesture and kind of just pointed and just like, look, what is that? Kind of like, clue in, people, pretend it's a plane. And it
You have to, I suppose. That's, oh my goodness.
Oh my.
Yes, that was that. Yeah, I remember that was one of those things.
That was the critical thing. And that was at the Living Arts Center, not to, you know, to draw any
Wow.
weapons fire in the direction of the Living Arts Center. That's right. I remember that there was just this. I mean, when the show was over, I think they all came out of the booth. They were all just like, they didn't have any words to describe what had happened, but you were staring at them. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Right. I think they may have even put up a sign, something about sound down.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, Karen, wow, I'm so grateful for your memory. Like, I'm really fascinated by the story of us talking partway through a tour about this relationship between Jan and Anna.
Yeah, as I say, I have put all of the photographs from the tour, like the photo shoot shots, into the journal that I carried as the character.
Right.
So, and with that, then I have a few of my own personal acting journal notes tucked in, and that's why I can remember some of these things.
Wow. Because
actually, I had something to read.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, that was one of the first things that we talked about. We, meaning David Van Bell and I, were talking about how, like, what does it mean to do Stranger in the Land now, 25 years later?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's happened? Well, a whole generation of people has gone away, and Anna is now her granddaughter. Anna is now like your daughter, you know. Well, no, not your daughter, but she. The survivors of the war are mostly gone now.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with it's a generational kind of a story, and that became a much bigger feature of the rewrite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that was evolving, and that we were talking about that as it came, and also the thread of Anna in therapy as opposed to Anna lecturing, the victim stories as opposed to.
Well, it was very unclear in the script in terms of why does she like this. For both shows, I came in from the audience up onto the stage. So there's a sense to which at the beginning of the show, Anna knows she's on a stage, like it's not, and then at the end I would leave the same way. And so it wasn't clear in the second show where I was coming from and what I thought I was doing. And so that was just sort of something that I just felt like, because of that, the big opening monologue turns into this thing that it sucks me in as well, into a memory. And there's a nightmare sequence and things. So
right.
That's why I kind of got the idea that it was sort of this piece of therapy trying to deal with.
Right.
But at that point, though, it was fairly clearly, for me anyway, what Anna was dealing with was the fact that there was her father's suicide. It's not, she doesn't think of it as a war issue
right.
until she gets sucked into the story. It's more that piece, because in that production, she's the one who finds her father.
That's right.
So
that's right. So speaking
that's part of her story.
This, so Severin had no knowledge of this early edition of the play, and you had no knowledge of this new one, the old and the
well, you
new
let
one.
me read it.
Yeah, that's right. I sent it to you, so I'm so curious. So Severin.
I read that Sunday.
Yeah. Oh no. So Severin, what are some of the observations? You actually said a few things to me after you'd read it. Like what are some of the things that you observe about the difference between the two versions of the play? Because I think you exist in similar worlds, but it's a different kind of feeling, right?
Very different. So it sounds like the second iteration that you did, Karen, sounds more similar to the iteration that I did. But the first iteration, which I think is the one you sent me, Ray, it's just vastly different. I feel like Anna's way more removed. She's very much more just the sort of, I guess, narrator, the bridge for the audience in. But with our version, it's just so much more about family relations. And me being Anna and Jan being my Opa was like everything for me. Like that struggle was everything for me, because Anna doesn't have a father. So I think the only male parental attention she got from Opa was from Opa. And that is a problematic relationship because he's full of trauma and doesn't know how to talk about his feelings. And that sort of transfers to me, and I don't know how to talk about my feelings. So I have the mental breakdown and I'm trying to figure all this out. But it comes way more from like a family relations, like itty gritty family stuff rather than war stuff, like you were saying, Ray. And then it just sort of sucks me into it. And I'm in the middle of this trying to figure it out. But that's one major difference I noticed is the family relations.
I think a lot when it came to the rewrite, a lot of stuff that didn't tie into that idea of this being a family story, just all fell right off the table, and everything that could affect Anna, that would illuminate her character, that would challenge her in some way, everything came into sharp focus. Like, if Truus is her auntie, what does that mean? Why is Truus in the story? And so a lot of small characters got either cut or they got amalgamated together. Like, I mean, even in the current version of it, like I think I was really thinking about how silent Geeske was. So Jan's wife, her Oma, Anna's Oma is Geeske's, Jan's wife. Like, what is her connection to this? If Jan's the guy who had all this war trauma, what about her? Like, what's her story? How does that connect? And so late in the process of writing recently, she's the one that got the biggest changes. She became a person who was somebody who suffered in silence, but only near the end of the play does she really speak to it. So Karen, what were your thoughts about the new version? How did that resonate with you?
Yeah, it was very clear that it was way more focused on the family piece. I mean, even when we had talked about trying to turn some of that more into father-daughter pieces, it wasn't necessarily actually my dad because of some other things that were in the script at the time, but it was a sense to which I connected their experiences together. And for some reason, he connected to mine. So yeah, I did notice that, and I mean, it was funny because there's a few things that I looked at and was actually disappointed to see got cut.
Oh,
like just, what? They were just fun little moments more than anything else. But I did think, yeah, that the story got darker again. Like it was the same kind of development, I think, between the first version and the second, where you needed. Well, one of the, like your comment, Anna, she was so disconnected the first time. She was like the narrator who was trying to tell these stories that kept getting out of her control. But yeah, it was trying to give her a stake in telling the story. And so now it's like the stakes just go up that little bit more for her. So, but yeah, there was just a couple of little vignettes that I always thought were really cute.
What were the cute vignettes?
Well, one that I can think of off the top of my head is Frank. I was disappointed in some of what got cut with Frank. I love what you did with Frank in the second act.
Right.
Like you actually expanded his story in the second act. But in the first act, Frank first appears on stage. Remember him, Jason, they come out with the gun, like he's clearing the street, like they're checking. They're so he's tripping along like he's with a troop, and he shushes me at one point because I'm like, and then he knocks on a door.
Oh yes.
And someone inside opens the door, and he turns around and goes, "Hi, I'm Frank."
That's right. Canadian. That's right. At the door. That's right.
And it was just this funny little sequence where he introduces himself and asks them to stay inside and gives them a chocolate bar.
Oh yes.
It was actually, I think at that point too, we just had one of the more deeply dramatic moments. So it's this cute little, lively little fun moment, and then we move very quickly into liberation from there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I just remember that just struck me when Frank appears.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
I'm like,
like magic. Yeah, that's right.
Well, and I have in my notes somewhere that apparently one night, and I think it was actually while we were on the road, Frank appears and someone goes, "Hey, Frank!" from the audience.
Oh, really?
So that's the other reason why Frank stood out to me.
I think there was a man who came to, I won't name him, but he came to like the London show, he came to the Sarnia show, and I think he came to the Blythe show.
Yeah.
And he was inviting his kids who all kind of lived around the area.
He's also in Mississauga.
Oh, was he at Mississauga at the end? Do you remember him?
Well, yeah, you had Ryan and I go out and meet him one night.
Okay.
When I guess he had come up to you, I guess it was the second or third time he'd been out.
Yeah.
And so you had Ryan and I go out and talk to him after the show.
Yeah, his granddaughter has nearly completed the program at Redeemer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This mysterious
and so
granddaughter.
Yeah, and then just the way that Mississauga was set up, I spotted him in the house.
Oh yes. What a beautiful theater that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Severin, did you have...
Blythe or Drayton was my favorite, but...
Sorry? Which one?
Sorry, I missed that.
I am curious, Karen, just to pop back, like, which of the theater spaces that you performed in is the most memorable for you?
I have a fairly, I don't know whether it's Blythe or Drayton, but the one that was, it was one of the two because it was like it's a real theater. Because I just remember that we had to, there was a tunnel to connect the front and the back. And then we were up and down, and then it was an old vaudeville house.
That's Owen Sound.
Yeah, because then we were upstairs in the basement for all the dressing rooms and everything too.
Crazy.
It was just a really neat space. Yeah, it was just a beautiful space.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. We couldn't quite get the set in at Blythe Festival Theatre. We had these two wings that kind of came out, and both of those wings actually hit the edges of the proscenium, and so we had to have people like step up and over, and it was just a bit of a...
Yeah, it wasn't as deep for the bridge piece. I know one of them also was a little tricky for me because the stage was so high. It didn't actually have stairs.
Oh.
We had to rig something, I think, or the stairs were in an odd place or something. I just remember that before the show, that was one of the things I had to do every night. Well, as soon as we moved into a space, we all had tech responsibilities somehow. And but one of the things I had to do as part of the load-in was actually to check the space to figure out how I was getting in and out.
Yeah. Kind of critical.
And how do I get to the back of the theater to get in?
In Lindsay, we had to exit the theater and walk along the sidewalk along the side.
Yeah.
Did you remember that? That was a good
Yes.
thing.
Well, and the boat sequence when they board the boat and they're calling out the different boat names, they all walk down through the house as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think
another scene to be cut. Sadly.
Yeah. Well, and we had to cut that as well. I think in a couple of places they had to enter. They couldn't enter through the house.
Yeah.
It was too hard for some of the cast. So sometimes they had to come from the wings. I seem to think that we did that, but that was the other sequence that I noticed that was missing was the conversation Jan and I have on the boat. That was a pivotal scene for me in the second show. Because that's the scene where I tell the story about my dad.
Right.
Up until that point, something weird happened because you got I keep having these vision things, like it's like flashback moments of my own where I talk about smoke. I keep smelling the smoke, and
that's right.
Why do I smell smoke? And you kind of associate this to it's the war smells, but it's actually the barn burning when my dad kills himself. So
right. Yeah.
And it's not until that moment that you hear the whole story about the fact that that's what she saw.
Yeah.
And both Jan and Truus hear that. I'm telling it to Jan, but Truus is the only other person on stage.
Yeah. It's the boat and the train. Those are and the Donnellys, the scene with the shovel. Those are the revelatory scenes. So the scene with Donnelly in our version is the one where Jan, because he never tells the story of what happened to him in The Stranger in the Land 2. This time we know he talks more about what the torture did to him and what it meant to his wife too. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Severin? What was I think in this conversation about generational violence or trauma, I should say, What was like, where was the biggest challenge for you in accessing Anna's journey with respect to that? Did it feel like something you could sort of access? Did it seem kind of, was it difficult to sort of get your head around that?
It wasn't hard for me at all. My family's from Brazil, so we have tons of generational trauma. So, you know, it's something that is close to home in that sort of way. And family not really talking about certain things, and that sort of like things, family members acting certain ways but not being able to talk or justify, and you sort of watching this and being a child and being confused and growing up with angst or whatever, that all just made sense to me in so many ways. So that wasn't really a challenge for me. I guess the thing that was a challenge is placing it in a different context, because I mean, I'm from Brazil, and you know, I'm not Dutch, so I felt a certain responsibility. You know, being a Dutch historian is something I'm not at all. Trying to be accurate, trying to be sensitive to what the differences in those kinds of trauma was, I guess, the challenge. And staying in that mental place for like the whole play is just a like sort of physical challenge. Yeah,
Accessing the Dutch
that
thing,
makes sense.
right? So Karen, you had the same thing. Like the kind of Dutch Reformed kind of world that's just kind of beyond the edges of the play. Do you have a recollection of what that was like for you to access that? I mean, I think you were interested in theology already. So, but was there a way, like how did you sort of enter into that space?
Well, I may have had more time because with the two shows. Because certainly for the first one, I didn't really have to do that.
Right.
The same. And in fact, the play itself kind of provided a way for me to do that with the first one. At that time, of course, I was a student, and so you run into other castmates and things around school and things. And we did a lot. I don't remember this with the second one, and it might have been because I was an alumni and I would just come onto campus for rehearsals and leave. But with the first show, you know, you'd run into each other, and we would sit in the cafeteria, and I would hear their grandparents' stories. They would talk about, this is, you know, the stories of their uncles or whatever from whatever stories were actually being told within the families or within the communities. So we shared a lot of those stories. And then, of course, I had, you know, a couple of years sort of to getting hanging out with friends and sort of getting a glimpse of that environment a little bit more. So yeah, but
I'm happy that the play actually helps to situate. I mean, I think Anna is intended to be not sort of from the inside of that world. She's an outlier, you know, she's looking in, you know,
she's a stranger in the land.
She she is sort of a stranger herself, so yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But looking at it from the outside gives you, you know, you can be critical and you can make snappy comments. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that got cut was the two guys, well, no, Wim and Gerard arguing about church politics. There was actually a very specific church politics thing that went away, but the arguments, the argumentativeness of these people, and the jokes remained kind of outside comments rather than political comments.
Yeah. In the first iteration, they almost come to fisticuffs.
Right.
They almost punched each other.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and to really dig into all of that would be, I don't know how theatrically interesting it would be to, you know, really drill into, you know, how these people were fighting even during the war, right? I remember that was something that Henry de Bolster said. It's in my notes for this production. That Henry de Bolster talked about that there was actually enough energy for the church to split in the hunger winter of 1944-45. You know, when people were eating sugar beets and tulip bulbs and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Folks, we have about 8 minutes left because corporate Zoom says so. Like, what would be, like, for somebody who's looking in from the outside and maybe had familiarity with the show the first time, or who just saw this one, what would be some of the things that you would want people to take away from watching this play? What do you think people should hear from actors who are inside this world? Well, let's start with you, Severin.
Well, I think one of the big takeaways from the show is about the importance of vulnerability. I think the real thing that Anna goes through with Opa, especially in Act 2, after the Donnelly scene, and he finally opens up to Heiska and Anna, that is a very like restorative moment, even if it didn't really happen or did, you know. but showing that scene and just showing how reparative that can be, I think is really the takeaway of just being open and vulnerable with the people you love the most. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Yeah. Thoughts, Karen? It's been a while for you, and it's
yeah. I think, and trying to remember, enough of what it was. I mean, from what we were doing, I think for me it was certainly the second production, particularly. It was about healing. It was about facing the story. I think that sort of was part of what developed between Anna and Young, was the fact that she needed him to face the story so they could both heal. So if he could, that he could face the story, and that's why I pushed for the final sequence. I leave the journal behind. I don't need to carry their story anymore.
Right.
That's so funny you say that, Karen, because at the end of the play, I'm holding the journal and I make and they tell me to do a speech, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm not a preacher. And then I have a moment of like looking at the journal and I put it down and I step away from it. And I made the choice to do that. I just thought it was the moment of like.
Yeah, and that was the same thing as because I was supposed to pack up my stuff. Everybody else has left the stage. I pack up and put my stuff back in the briefcase that I'd walked on stage with. And I go to leave, and I stopped the one time, and I think I asked permission to do it, but I turned around and pulled the journal back out, and I have to leave it on the stage. I can't take it with me. Yeah. So we put it back on the set, and then I walk away from it.
Wow.
So yeah, I think it's the healing. You have to face the story, and then you can leave it behind.
Yeah. So even though you get to take the prop home and put it in.
Yeah, in the end, I took it with me.
That's right, and you get to just have that. Well, that sounds like a perfect ending. Did you keep the journal prop, Severin?
Me? Yeah. No, I didn't. Well, keep it, but I didn't have a chance to put anything in it, and it's got a bunch of weird scribbles from past shows. It was it was interesting to stare at that while on stage thinking about other things.
When Severin was like drawing with her fist. Anna's drawing with her fist early on in her therapy. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Karen, we hope you can join us on the Zoom call. I honestly, it's all witchcraft. I don't know how it's going to work at the end of the stream. That's supposed to be our talk back with the audience. So presumably there are going to be questions that people have been asking during the streaming of the show, or even to us. So we'll be there. Like, I think it would be great to tuck you into that whole process. Sure. If you're available on December 12th at 7:30 is the stream, so the show would start sometime after, remember, like 9:30 or something like that. But
I've blocked off the evening, so yeah, if you can figure out how to bring me into the call, let me know.
I'm sure there's a way.
A way to bring me in for that, like, for the post show.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Actually, there are a couple of memories from, I don't know if you would have shared those with the cast at the time, from the post shows and the stories that were told the first, I think it was the first time?
Yeah.
Well, we still had vets coming.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, the
That
story.
was special.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story of the veteran. My favorite is the Air Force guy.
That's right. And
Full Legion attire. Full Legion attire to thank us for showing the scene of the kids and the food drops.
yeah.
Because he flew in bombers. I don't remember what his role was in the plane, but
He was a navigator.
he was the navigator in a bomber flight, and his last flight was dropping food over, and he named the city, and it included chocolate bars. That's all he remembered. And he says he always wondered what that was like. So thank you for showing me that. Guy in his mid-50s behind him stands up and tells him, I was on the ground. It's my only memory of war.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true story. True story.
And everybody it's like silent.
That's like history and art coming together. That was truly a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Yeah,
I remember that. And
somewhere
in my collection is a photocopy of his flight plan.
Oh yeah?
I have to dig it up. I'm not sure where it is anymore. But yeah, I remember. It was a pastor, actually, who was on the ground. I mean, yeah, that's right. So the 50-year-olds who are now, mid-70s, approaching 80s, they were on the ground.
Yeah, because he was quite young. He said he doesn't remember much of the war, but he remembers the food drop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was incredible.
So the two of them had a nice chat after.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Ain't that a beautiful thing?
Mm-hmm.
The magic of theater.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for the time that you've set aside for this talk. I hope that people listening in feel the love and see how important it is to tell stories, right?
Yeah.
Also, Karen, I absolutely loved your Anna costume. I thought that was just awesome. I love that suit. I thought that was great.
They wanted me to look a little bit like a Dominic.
Yeah, that's right. Padded shoulders, you had a turtleneck. Yeah.
A long necklace.
And I had to, and they wanted me to just to stand out from all the earth tones.
That's right.
All the browns and everything, and I needed to look also in something that would upset Truth. Why are you wearing that? Like,
yeah, that's right. Something strange.
Something inappropriate for a girl to be wearing.
Yeah.
In the 1930s. So.
Yeah. My iteration of Anna looks very strange in the 1930s as well. So.
Sort of a black long shirt and a red tie and socks and boots and.
Yeah, the longness of my frock sort of looks like very surreal almost. Like when I watched it back, I feel like I almost look like a ghost, and since it's all black, like it's almost like it really adds to the not like I'm not actually here-ness of it.
Yeah.
So it was cool.
It was cool. It's cool. It's been an honor to be able to do this project. And thank you so much to both of you for the way you've contributed to the process and to help me write and create the story.
Thank you.
It was
so
a
much.
lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Bye-bye.
Memories.
All right.
Take care,
Bye,
everyone.
friends.
Bye.
Bye.